Again, good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're located. Today, I will be talking about the importance of product roadmaps. So I want to thank you in advance for taking the time to learn more about this important topic. And this webinar is scheduled for 30 minutes. My name is Lynn Miller. I am Director of Product Manager on the provider market, specializing in IDD. I'll be your presenter today. For the agenda today, the webinar is entitled The Importance of Product Roadmaps. We'll talk about what is a product roadmap. We'll talk about the goals in a product roadmap. We'll discuss the research and factors that go into a product roadmap. We'll even discuss what impact could product roadmaps have on our customers and our industry. I will give a product roadmap example. I have a slide that lists several resources that you might find helpful. And then we'll have a Q&A at the end. So all questions will be at the end during a Q&A time. Before I go to the next slide and start the official presentation, I'm going to open with a challenge to each of you, and I'm going to revisit this challenge at the end. If you've heard of product roadmaps, very likely you've heard of them in the context from a software company or a product roadmap about a software application. Now, I'm believing that many of you work in the healthcare industry, and many of you do not work directly for a software company. You work for an agency that provides direct care. So as you're watching this webinar and you listen to the topics over the next 25 minutes or so, I would challenge you to think about how a product roadmap could improve how your agency provides better care and achieves better outcomes. So think again in terms of how a product roadmap may help your agency. We'll come back to that at the end of this webinar. So what is a product roadmap? I'll read it, then we'll highlight several keys that I highlighted and underlined here. So a product roadmap is a high-level visual summary that maps out the vision and direction of your product over time. A product roadmap communicates the what and the why behind what you are building. A roadmap is a guiding strategic document as well as a plan for executing the product strategy. Several keys in this brief explanation of a product roadmap. First of all, it's high level. You don't want to get into the minute details. Again, you want to stay at a high level. Visual is very important. You want to make it look very, very pretty, and you want to make it very easy to read and understand. That's why visual is important. You want to make sure the vision and direction is stated. We want to make sure you help others know where the product is heading. There needs to be a time component. There should be some level, at least a high level understanding of when to expect certain features or items in the future. The what and the why is very important. It's very important that we explain what is coming, but also why it is coming. And last but not least, a guiding document and a plan. This is a product roadmap isn't something you just put on the shelf. After you put it together, you actually execute from it. What are the goals of a product roadmap? Well, identified 5 goals. You want to make sure that you achieve the goal of describing your vision and strategy. We kind of just talked about that on the previous slide. Make sure it's clear where it's heading, the product is heading. You want to provide a guiding document for executing the strategy. This will help prioritize new things that may come in, new ideas. But this is a guiding document to make sure that you stay on schedule, on task. Alignment's very important in a goal with a product roadmap. We'll talk about several stakeholders, but let's talk from an internal perspective. Other departments within your organization, your teammates, The product roadmap is a great way to make sure there's internal alignment around the product. So that's a goal that we want to achieve in a product roadmap. It definitely helps facilitate discussion of options and scenario planning. By doing the exercise of putting a product roadmap together, it helps facilitate those conversations and kind of forces those conversations to happen, and allows you to think through the various options. What if we did this, or what if we did that? And the pros and cons and the trade-offs involved. Last but not least, one of the goals on a product roadmap is to help communicate with our external or your external stakeholders, especially your customers. We want to make sure, a product roadmap is a great tool for making sure there's consistent messaging outside of your company/agency. So those are some of the key goals that we have when we put together a product roadmap. So let's now talk about what research and factors go into our product roadmap. How do we put product roadmaps together? I'm going to first start with a very key statement, and that is an item on a product roadmap should go through the lens of, does it provide value? Okay. If it doesn't provide value, it's a waste of resources. And in fact, doing low value items will get in the way of doing high value items. So that's a key when you think about a product roadmap. So that then begs the question, well, how do we know if it provides value? Now, there are multiple ways of determining if it will provide value, but the one I'm going to suggest today is through a process that's called design thinking. Okay, so let's talk about design thinking for a minute or two. Design thinking is a process for solving problems by prioritizing the customer needs above all else. It relies on observing with empathy is a key here, how people interact with their environments, and employs an iterative, hands-on approach to creating innovative solutions. These couple sentences are so important. I want to repeat it again. Think through every word that I'm sharing, especially the empathy point. Design thinking is a process for solving problems by prioritizing the customer needs above all else. It relies on observing with empathy how people interact with their environments and employs an iterative, hands-on approach to creating innovative solutions. Design thinking is a great way to know and put together your product roadmap to ensure that you're doing things that are of high value to your customers. Talk a little bit more about this research, this design thinking that I'm talking about. So let's talk about some design thinking practices. One is called a lean canvas, sometimes known as a business plan canvas. And that is a one-page summary to help you. It especially helps you like during the brainstorming stage. It usually contains sections. Remember, it's a one-pager. It usually contains sections where you identify the problem, you identify the solution, you identify some key metrics that you need to track, you identify your unique value proposition, you identify your unfair advantage, you identify your target customers, the cost structure, and last but not least, you identify the revenue streams. It's a great way to see everything and think through everything on a single page. Lean canvas, sometimes it's called a business plan canvas. Another tool that's used in design thinking is what we call a SWOT analysis. SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Okay, so this helps guide you on what you're doing well. It helps you address what you're not doing so well or your weaknesses. It helps you think through what are your opportunities that are out there for you, and also what threats. It's always important to think through the threats and help and trying to minimize those risks, those threats that are out there. I've already kind of mentioned it, but some of the key things in design thinking is talking and observing customers. So that's whether it's customer or user research. There's several tools out there from a research perspective. It's hard to really beat though direct conversations, and especially when you're observing your customers. If you think about it, You know, how else do you really know what your customers are going through? What's it like to sit in their shoes? And that's where the empathy comes in. You really want to make sure you understand, what's going well for them, what isn't going well, what's frustrating, using your product, etc. Couple more things that go into our design thinking practices. Market analysis, including changing market landscapes. It's important to stay on top of the industry you're in and the changes that are coming. We're in a fast changing world now. And last but not least, it's very important to know what your competitors are doing. These are just some of the key keys we believe that make sense to really help with design thinking practices to help do the research and make those decisions of what goes into a product roadmap. So let's think about what impact could product roadmaps have on customers and the industry we're in. My example is going to come from a software perspective. We're going to think about it like we are at Sandata, a software company that provides software to the healthcare industry, especially software that's geared towards making our agencies more streamlined and efficient. Okay, so let's say we have a great roadmap out there. So what could that do for us? And what could it do for our customers? What could it do for our industry? So first, we believe that a product roadmap will help us produce better software that aligns with the needs of the customer. That's really what I've stated so far. We want to make sure that they have high value items that's based on design thinking, which comes from customer conversations and customer observations. Better software. Which if we do that, that should allow agencies to become more efficient, especially in how their staff perform their job duties. That's a goal we have. Help staff become more efficient, especially on the administrative side, so they can spend more time directly doing service to the individuals they serve. And we want to make sure the job duties they're supposed to do actually get accomplished, and especially in a timely fashion. We want to make sure what the staff is supposed to be doing does indeed happen in the right time. This ideally translates into better care and reduced costs in serving each individual, ultimately allowing the agencies to be more profitable and care for more individuals with less resources. That's a goal that we would have, that if we do our job with our software, kind of impact that we could have for our customers and our industry. Now I'm going to show an example of a product roadmap. So this is from our company, Sandata. This is focused on the IDD side. So we would have published this about a month and a half ago. There's 8 pages. This is page 1. It's a cover page. You remember the concept of visual. So this is a very very visual. You can see there's a road that leads, and there's maps, kind of pointers, if you will, along the way. So visual is very important to a roadmap. Then our page 2 here, we give an overview of our company. We'll not read word for word, but we just talk about Sandata is constantly innovating to empower our agencies and payers to thrive in an ever-changing healthcare industry, etc. The point here is to give an overview of you and your company. Then the 3rd page, we talk about the roadmap. Okay, I will read from here. This is important. So this is what we present in our roadmap. That we have developed a roadmap that outlines forthcoming enhancements, innovations, and new developments that will positively impact our customers by streamlining workflows, supporting compliance, enhancing user experience, and helping their business grow. These updates are driven by feedback from our customers, market needs, and changing industry regulations. Again, kind of talking there about that design thinking concept. How do we update our roadmaps? Next paragraph is also very important, and a topic I want to key on is a roadmap is an intentionally flexible plan that allows our team to be responsive to evolving customer and industry needs while increasing transparency, accountability, and communication between our team and our customers. This tool offers our customers information about upcoming changes, that ensures that we are listening to their needs, and demonstrates our commitment to providing value-based improvements. These updates are purposely dynamic and may be associated with an earlier or later time frame to ensure the highest values is delivered with every release. That's what I want to key on, that last part, where when we think of a roadmap, don't think of it as something that you're going to put together, put on the shelf, never look at it, and just and also maybe you look at it, but you're never going to change it. That's not how you should think of a roadmap. In this world, things change too fast. We have to make sure that we're responding very quickly to changing dynamics. So a roadmap by design is intended to be flexible in the future, in the future months, in the upcoming months and quarters. But there still needs to be a plan of more of an immediate plan, but you want to make sure that you can change if and as needed. So we state that in our roadmap that we present. The fourth slide on our roadmaps is where we talk about our areas of focus. Okay, so there are six, we call them pillars, but there are 6 pillars that we want to make sure that when we have an item on our roadmap, it adheres to 1 to 6 of these pillars. So from a software perspective, we call that one of the pillars is a delightful user experience, making it easier to use our software. A second pillar is streamlined workflows, reducing time spent in key operational workflows. The third pillar is around data-driven insights and analytics, delivering actionable insights based on real-time data. Third pillar is continuous innovation, applying emerging technologies to solve challenges. Fifth pillar is regulatory compliance. Healthcare, a lot of regulations. We need adapting to changing regulations so we meet, or you meet, your compliance standards. And last but not least, a pillar of agency growth, accelerating your business's growth in a competitive landscape. So when we think through each of the items on our roadmap, we make sure that each of the items are tied to 1 or up to 6 of these pillars. So the first 4 pages, starting with the cover to the next 3 that I had just said, is information about how to read our roadmap, what's important to the roadmap, etc. Page 5, then we start with some information that each roadmap, which each time we have an update to the roadmap, it would change. So in page 5, we call it seasonal highlights, where we like to show and list, if you will, what has been achieved in a fairly recent update, whether it's the last month, last quarter. We're just listing the items because that's very important to make sure people understand where we've been, what we just finished, and where then the next pages we'll talk about where we're heading next. Okay, so in here we talked about an application tracking system, client census, some things that we're doing from a pilot perspective. So we're just giving, again, everyone an understanding of what we've just have just finished. Again, called seasonal highlights. Last 3 pages are broken into now, next, and later. So now is what we're working on now. So these priority items are actively in the works right at E. So whether it's MFA, a brand new feature called tracking service delivery limits, enhancing improving our partial payments that we do in billing, improving and expanding our service plans, and just improving usability for mobile and performance. This is what we're working on now. And a couple things you're going to notice here is that, again, each item has 1 to 6 of those pillars that we talked about. The other thing you're going to notice here is that each sentence is a little longer than you're going to see on a couple next slides, and that's intentional. We want to give more information about what we're doing now because we know this is what we're working on. If I go to the next page, which is called the next slide, these developments will be in our upcoming focus. Now remember, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to be worked on next, because remember the changing landscape, we want to be agile, we want to make sure that we can adjust as needed. So these are the things that we're planning to work on as of when we put this roadmap together. So what you'll notice here, again, the same icon shows to say what pillars each one's for, but you're going to notice that each one is less words. We're intentionally just saying this is what we plan to work on soon. A short sentence, no more than one sentence for each item. Okay. We'll be working on multi-payer billing, improving our reports. We want to continue to improve our mobile user experience and continue to improve the system experience. Starting to think about dashboards in our software. We want to work on scheduled reports and continue notifications. So these things that are very likely going to be bubble up soon on a future roadmap. And last but not least, there's one more page on our roadmaps. We call it the later. Later, you can see here, they're just bullet points, okay? No sentence, no bullet, just things that we're thinking about, keeping our eyes on. Doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to be next. They could be sometime in the future, just no timing yet, but we're really looking at, showing that we're planning, we're thinking, every time we put a roadmap together, we're looking at, what's new, what's changed, but keeping an eye on these targets as well. So that's an example of a roadmap that we have in IDD at Sandata. Couple slides before Q&A. I mentioned early on that there's some resources. So if you're interested in learning more about producing your own roadmaps, the website Product Plan, I have the full link here, has some very good content about learning what a product roadmap is and how to produce one. And I talked quite a bit about design thinking. I really emphasize that. So here's a link to give you more information about this. IDEO is a global design and innovation company. And it would be, in my opinion, it would be a wise investment of your time to spend more time on their website, learning about their ideas and the resources they offer. They're really at the forefront of innovation. Innovative thinking, we say it that way. Okay, remember I told you I had a challenge for you at the beginning. So I'm going to kind of reemphasize this. Product roadmaps are typically associated with software companies and software applications. But the challenge I want you to think about is, again, I'm assuming that most of you actually don't work for a software company. You work for an agency that provides services to the individuals you serve. What if you took one of the services that you have? I'm just going to pick one. Let's just say you have respite services. What if you thought about your respite service as a product? What if you thought about putting together a product roadmap for your respite services? What if you use design thinking? What if you put together a business plan, a SWOT analysis? You talked with and observed your customers with empathy, of course. What effect could that have on your agency, your staff, and most importantly, the parents and the individuals that use your respite services? So a challenge to think about using product roadmaps in your agency. We have 5 minutes left. We're now going to go to Q&A. First of all, thank you for your time, for listening to this webinar. We have April and Sammy that will be taking questions, and they're going to, as questions come in, they will say them, and I will do my best to answer the question.
Hey, Lynn, so we do have a couple of questions. The first one is, with feedback from customers, market trends, and everything else to consider, how do you select and prioritize items to go on the roadmap?
Yeah, great question. We always have to think in terms of regulation changes. So it's not uncommon that that things change, whether it's for IDD, whether it's billing rules, or rate changes or things like that. And so we have to look at deadlines, especially when they're from a regulatory perspective. Okay, so once you get beyond that, then it's really about value. Okay, it's really about value. And one of the exercises that I find very helpful is that it's easy to say that these are the top 5 or the top 10. It's easier to put things into camps of top 5 or top 10. But if you really force yourself to say, if I could just do one thing, what would provide that the most value? And you pick that as number 1. And then after you did that, okay, then you say, okay, from what's left, if I could just do one more thing, what would it be? So we really try to emphasize value, and that's not always easy, because when you have lots of customers, the value of one may be different than the value for another agency. So we have to look broadly across. So regulatory kind of wins typically, and then highest value items that will help the most number of customers would be ordered next.
Great. And here's another one. How do you handle customer expectations when roadmap challenges or plans don't fully pan out? Do you want me to repeat it?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, thank you.
How do you handle customers' expectations when the roadmap changes or plans don't fully pan out?
Yeah. So currently, the way that would work is that we are the next roadmap we would produce would indicate what has been accomplished. And so in that case, if it didn't pan out, it would not show under the accomplished list. And then very likely it would show up in the now, or it would get moved back later. So all the roadmaps that we produce are available. And so it would be a matter of we would say what got done, and then if it didn't get done that we intended, it would still show up on one of those other pages to do or coming up.
Okay, and one more. What is the best method for submitting feedback or feature request to Sandata?
So we use a product called Zendesk for all our tickets, whether it's a support request, but that same system is used for feature enhancements. So you can submit a quote unquote support request, but just kind of name it as a feature enhancement, and then we have a triage team here at Sandata that looks at all incoming tickets, if you will. I'll just use the word tickets. And if it's a support request, it will go down the path of the support team. And if it's a feature request, it will follow another path, and it will eventually, very, very quickly, show up on the product side, which is the part that for IDD I'm in charge of. It will show up there to review. So what we do when we get an enhancement request, I'm kind of reiterating several of the things that I mentioned. We have to look at it from across all of our customers. We have to look at it from a regulatory landscape. We have to look at it, with our way we're heading with our product. And so, not every feature request, of course, does it make sense to fit into the direction of the software. And sometimes we will say no right away. That just doesn't mesh where we're going. Or we might say, yeah, this is a good idea, but not now. So we have what we call a parking lot. We'll put on the parking lot for a future consideration. Or something may bubble up and say, what, this is so important. This makes a lot of sense. It's gonna come quicker through the process. So sending a ticket in, like you normally do for support, but just label it as a feature enhancement. And providing as much information as possible is always helpful. And I'll say it this way. Always start with what's the problem. Okay, what's the problem that's going on? Don't try to come up with a solution on your own, but what's the problem? That's because that's how we always started product. What's the problem that's out there? And then because there might be multiple solutions, but concentrate on the problem helps us get to the right gets to the right solution.
Perfect. And that's all we have for today.
Well, thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time. And again, would love it if you are implement a product roadmap at your agency for one of your services. We would love to hear about it. Thanks, everyone. Have a good afternoon.